I got one chance to get this right. Okay. Pierce foil at top of popper. All right. Hold popper firmly upright. Both hands. Yeah. Nice bit of ASMR. Let's turn the slide on. Yeah, there we go. Oh my god. Maybe not. I don't know. That is kind of a look. Sure, that's fine. I didn't like plan an intro for this. I wasn't even sure I wanted to do anything for 100K, but you gotta take your wins where you can get them, I guess. So, no, I feel like I should be a little more excited. No, this is cool. This is a big deal. And I'm happy, I guess, is the word people typically use when good things happen to them. This is my 100K Q&A. I thought it might be a nice way to mark the occasion and, do something to let people know a little bit more about me. So I'm just going to go ahead and read these questions. I asked questions on the Discord server, on Patreon, and on the community post. I'm going to try and answer them all. If I don't get to yours, it's probably because in editing I decided that my answer to your question was implied in the answer to another question, or I just didn't see it before I filmed. Certainly nothing against you. I did read all the questions, and there are some really, really great ones that I'm excited to talk about. So, okay, so firstly, I've got, could you explain your graduate work? Yes, I could. That's a really great question. I think I've been pretty vague about that, and it's a little complicated, my program, I think, so it bears explaining. So my undergrad and my master's degree are both in film theory, film studies. And currently I'm in the 5th year of my PhD program at a place called the Institute of Communications Research at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, which is basically like, it's a sort of like purposefully interdisciplinary program that sort of encourages you to combine whatever fields interest you in under the sort of like general umbrella of mass communications. So it's a communications degree, but they also make you get a minor, basically. So my concentration is in economics, and then I just through taking classes that I thought looked interesting, most of my methodology classes ended up being in anthropology. So basically what I've kind of cobbled together is a doctoral degree in the anthropology of media economics, which essentially boils down to sort of looking at the feedback loop between business practices and culture, and how culture influences business, and then how business influences culture, and that whole perpetual dance that we do. Right now I'm in the dissertation stage. I've completed all the coursework, and so right now I'm on fellowship. I'm on a research fellowship that allows me to not have to teach while I'm researching, which is awesome because I don't like teaching. Because all I have to really do is research and prep for my dissertation and write the thing and then defend it, I decided to move from where I was living in Illinois to LA to sort of be closer to industry activity and media as a whole. So that's why I'm in California, even though I'm getting a degree from the University of Illinois. If you want to know more about my dissertation, I have a public post on Patreon that basically describes the whole thing. I think it's a pretty good description of what I'm up to. But in short, my dissertation is going to be in video essay format. My professors have allowed me to do that, which is really cool. I've actually had a really, really great experience at the ICR. So I just passed my qualifying exam, which means that I'm qualified for a PhD. I've done all the coursework. I've done all the research. The only thing that I have to do is the dissertation itself, and then defend it, and then I will be Dr. Mariana. Hooray. Okay. What motivates and drives you? Honey, if I knew that, I'd have made a lot more videos by now. How does posting on YouTube interact with being a PhD student? In my academic days, anything not directly research related was viewed as suspect by professors and envied by my cohort. I can only hope times have changed. I've actually had like a pretty good experience sort of selling my YouTube stuff, my more sort of like new media focused stuff to my department, almost as like an alternate kind of publishing. So I made the channel as basically half my master's degree. I did a little bit of like a little write-up about, video essays and the potential I think they have for academic work and public scholarship and that kind of thing. And I know for a fact that that the ICR at UIUC, admitted me partially because they were interested in the work that I was doing there and wanted to see me do more of it. So they've actually been really supportive. I will say there's like I kind of feel like frequently academia doesn't really know what to do with what I'm doing, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. They are really open to possibilities, but I do kind of get the feeling that when I send my professors my stuff and when I have stuff to say, they read it and they're very polite and they're like, that's great, honey. Like keep going. I mean, I guess I can't ask for much more. They seem to more or less trust what I'm doing. So, I don't have a lot of room to complain. What is your favorite credible source to use? Books. I like books. Anything that properly cites its sources and like lays out its argument in a way that's intellectually honest, by which I mean that like when I say intellectually honest, I just mean that like the author is telling you every step that they took to get to their conclusion and every source they used in the process of getting to that conclusion. Articles are great too. I have nothing against articles. I just think that book length studies can get a lot more into detail and context, and I think that's often sort of overlooked in article length work. So yeah, books. What is your favorite non-credible source you've seen others use? Gossip, I think, is a great non-credible source. Even if it's not true, I think gossip reveals a lot about what is going on inside individuals' heads. I think it can reveal a lot more about human relationships than like either the gossiper or the gossipy really intend. So sort of like getting to like as a third party, sort of like if you're being told gossip, to sort of remove yourself from that situation, just sort of compartmentalize the part of your brain that allows you to look at the relationship that you're having with this person who's giving you this information, and sort of taking the conversation as its own sort of data set, as its own whole, that I think that can say, I think it can sort of result in becoming more than the sum of its parts. Gossip. I love it. Doing a PhD and maintaining a consistent, high quality creative output seems incredibly tough. How's your work-life balance, and do you have any tips for staying motivated? So first of all, I'm extremely touched that you think my stuff is, what was the word? Consistent? Oh man. But basically, I basically work for myself. That's the nice thing about being a PhD student in the dissertation stage, especially if you don't have to teach. So, that's super cool because it means I get to like wake up at noon and kind of do whatever I want all day. But also I have to make sure that I'm doing something. But I mean, I really like researching. I like learning stuff, and I like, writing. I like getting to talk about I don't like writing. I like having written. That's a different thing. But I really, really, really enjoy learning things. And it's extremely cool to get to do that as your job, even if nobody pays you very much. Really, the biggest thing that gets in my way in terms of motivation is just like the imposter syndrome thing, like the idea that like my thoughts are too obvious, they don't matter, nobody cares, like nothing I'm doing is worthwhile. I think if you can just allow yourself to like the things that you like, then that sort of automatically kind of pushes you into a skill set, right? Like it pushes you into a specialty, because when you get obsessed with something, you want to know everything there is to know about it. And you want to study. And I think like, I kind of don't think there's any finer way to be as a human. I sort of think that like study mode is the best possible status in terms of just like, you know, daily life. For me, I think it's like I get the sort of same satisfaction as I do from eating, you know? I love studying. Post PhD, what do you see yourself doing? Academia or etc., whatever. I don't love the idea of pursuing academia. I don't like teaching, like I said, and the job market is basically impossible right now. Like, especially if you're in the humanities, like it's really, really, really difficult to get any kind of tenure track job, but which is basically, you know, the career track that gets you to a professorship. There are plenty of adjunct positions, but I don't want those. I don't like teaching enough to you know, to live below the poverty level. Sorry. I think what I'd really like to do is just continue independent research. You know, I'll keep doing YouTube as long as I can. And then, you know, potentially move more into writing nonfiction, independent journalism, you know, independent scholarship. I think in terms of like my field, I like what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sick of thinking about social media. One of the professors on my committee is a police anthropologist, and I've had a lot of really, really interesting conversations with him about, you know, the philosophy of conflict and war and policing and law enforcement and that kind of thing. I think that's in terms of study, I think that's kind of the direction I'm headed. I don't know. We'll see. I'll probably write books of some kind eventually. But I mean, money is a thing. It's like you need money to survive. It sucks. If it really comes down to it, I can go to work for a think tank or a foundation or something. Like whatever makes me not want to gouge out my eyes with a melon baller, you know. What are 2 to 4 favorite papers or books you've seen in the academic sphere that you wish could reach a wider audience? Okay. This is a big one. So I just finished a book called How to Lose the Information War today. It's pretty good. What it is basically a history of Russia's propaganda interference in the politics of Eastern Europe before the 2016 election, when they interfered with ours. The other is an article called Commanding the Trend. Let's see. Commanding the Trend, Social Media as Information Warfare, which is by a lieutenant colonel in the US Air Force and also talks about Russian propaganda. I'm suggesting these because I genuinely think the modern Russian propaganda model is really, really something to be concerned about. It's no fucking joke. And I think it's really disturbing how many leftists dismiss the idea that Russia's propaganda model is capable of making any kind of meaningful impact, especially on their own ideas. Like typically, God, it drives me crazy because I see people that I respect saying this, where like you'll bring up Russian propaganda or Chinese propaganda or the various forms of data harvesting or whatever, and then the response will always be, oh, like, no, America doesn't do propaganda. America doesn't do psyops. You fucking hypocrite. And it's like, I mean, yeah, of course America does propaganda. Of course America like commits atrocities. But like, first of all, no, America is not doing anything like what Russia is doing. Russia's propaganda model is by far more sophisticated and more effective than anything the US is doing right now. That's why I suggest that article by the Air Force guys, not because I think the US military is so credible. It's that, you know, he's a guy who's saying, listen, like, Russia is manipulating people in a way that we have not only not ever seen before, but that we don't have anything to counter, and we don't have anything that matches up in any way. It's kind of like leftists have this weird sort of reverse nationalism where they think that no other country is capable of like coming up with anything worse than the US does. Russia spends millions and millions of dollars influencing global politics, specifically through social media, and America simply has nothing that compares. It's not to say that, like, you know, we shouldn't care about American propaganda or American imperialism or anything. It's that we shouldn't excuse any imperialism at all. Like, you should care about, you know, foreign imperialist propaganda for the same reason you should care about American imperialist propaganda. Like, I find it really difficult to take people seriously when they defend these nakedly imperialist global superpowers' ability to just like continue picking away at the fabric of society because they're too fucking attached to their TikTok algorithm or whatever. Like, listen, I'm certain I'm going to get pissy comments about this, but the very argument that we shouldn't care about foreign imperialist propaganda because America has its own propaganda is literally a Russian propaganda line. Like, we know that. We see it in proven Russian propaganda. And the reason for this is because Russia's goal right now is to convince everybody on earth that democracy is impossible and that the only like real, true, good way to structure a society is by some kind of like Hobbesian authoritarian ethno-state. The point is, yes, America bad. I get it. Sure, but like, I'm glad we agree it sucks here. But other places also suck. And they suck more in some ways. And their strategy right now is to make us think that we suck more than we actually do so that they can look better by comparison. Like, I mean, like, sit and think about the fact that one of the only things that the American populist left and the American populist right can kind of agree upon is that Russia probably isn't doing anything wrong. Come on, grow the fuck up. So yeah, I really want people to start taking Russian propaganda models seriously and understand them and, read up on how they work and how to recognize them and how to not be taken in by propaganda that appeals explicitly toward emotion and partisanship. I mean, and it's not to say that partisanship is itself uniformly bad. It's just that we need to be really, really careful about, which ideas we're claiming as our own, because it's really, really easy to get sort of like caught up in an emotional moment, or like the sort of emotional tide of social media and not stop to think about what you're doing just because everybody else is saying the same thing. 2 intellectuals that have most influenced your life. Okay. Let's see, I brought some show and tell here. I've been slowly working my way through everything that David Graeber ever wrote. He's really awesome. David Graeber is an economic anthropologist who died a few years ago. RIP. Huge loss for anthropology specifically. Of these books, I think Debt is probably the best. Though The Dawn of Everything is also really, really good, and I recommend it to absolutely everybody. Graeber is great because he's extremely accessible. Anybody can read Graeber. He's a really, really great writer. And he's really, really good at explaining sort of complicated ideas in a simple way. He's also an anarchist. He's sort of famous in anarchist circles. And does a really great job of sort of dismantling arbitrary hierarchy systems and sort of revealing what makes them so arbitrary. So Graeber for sure. Also, oh my God. Anna Lowenhaupt Singh, she's really great. Friction is a really good book. So is The Mushroom at the End of the World. She's really, really good at describing the actual effects of capitalism on daily life. And sort of like dismantling the kinds of myths of efficiency that capitalism runs on. So, between the two, Graeber is the more effective communicator, I think. I think he's certainly more fun to read, but I think Singh is probably the better scholar. How do you think people should begin gaining media literacy? Okay, I think the first and best thing people can do to improve their media literacy really, really quickly is to remember that social media is not your friend. Social media likes to act like your friend. It likes to pretend that it's the place where all your friends are, and it simply isn't. Grow your in-person relationships and support systems so that you do not have to get them online. I understand that a lot of online communities have done a lot of people a lot of good, but I don't think that even the best online communities are made better by being online. If all your friends are online, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you or whatever, but like, call them on the phone, please. Like, drive out to meet them. Like, get off the internet. And talk to people in real life. I think it's only when people start to divest their emotional engagement with the internet that the internet actually starts to become useful and become sort of the tool that it's supposed to be. Genuinely, I think you could do all sorts of research about media literacy, and it wouldn't do anything for you if you still have your sort of emotional fulfillment attached to social media. So yeah, do whatever you can to get off the goddamn internet. That's what I suggest. What's your method for approaching a new writing project, research structure, etc.? How do you combat writer's block? I cannot write anything at all unless I'm genuinely curious about the subject. I'm not a good bullshitter, So basically my system is that I've found that every writing project that I'm genuinely interested in, which should be all of them, is basically a long form answer to a question that I've come up with. So like for the Sound of Freedom video, the question that I was answering was basically, how did Sound of Freedom become such a success? Where, sort of similarly structured pieces of media, like everything the Daily Wire produces, did not become a success. Like, what's the difference between the two? And I think that, in the course of answering that question, you naturally sort of get into, conservative media structures and how how they're in conversation with conservative culture, because the more you learn about Sound of Freedom, the more, like, the clearer it becomes that it couldn't have existed without conservative culture. Writer's block, I mean, I don't enjoy writing most of the time. Most of the time it feels like kind of a chore. There are bits about editing that I like, but it's still a job, As a whole, writer's block only happens for me if I don't care about the question. So if I don't care about the question, then I either need to change the question or change the topic, or if that doesn't do it, then I need to check in with my brain and see how things are going up there. See if there's any mental health issues I need to take care of. What texts should people read if they want to get into media economics? Okay, so the thing about media economics is that it's a phrase that kind of sounds more specific than it actually is because of how our culture sort of colloquially understands the word media and the word economics. So the field of economics is a medium. It's a cultural conversation we're having. Like, various economic ideologies will say that economics is a science. It's not. Economics is not a science. Economics is a continual negotiation of the distribution of resources. It never operates on perfect efficiency because humans don't operate on perfect efficiency. Our ability to get resources as humans is dependent on literally nothing more than our ability to convince other people to give us stuff. And our ability to convince people to give us stuff is always affected by culture. It's always shaped by culture. That's what manners are, So if you're interested in media economics, I would argue that what you're really interested in is political economy, which makes sense because political economics is sort of like the precursor intellectually to economics as a field. So you have your sort of like basic to the letter media economics textbooks like Manufacturing Consent. Its modern corollary, I'd say, is The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Really, really good book. It's, not entirely, but essentially sort of manufacturing consent for the digital age, which is necessary. Holy shit. Then I would recommend anything that's sort of more broadly concerning the political economy of capitalism specifically. And man, like people will hear that, I think, and think that political economics is all about like dismantling capitalism or whatever. It isn't. No, it's just that capitalism is the system that we live under right now. And we need to understand how it works. We need to understand its power structures and how things get done within capitalism. So I'd recommend anything by Vincent Mosco. He's really great. Robert McChesney also. And also because I've moved, sort of scooched more toward anthropological analysis. I just showed you Debt, the First 5,000 Years. That's a really great book. And The Mushroom at the End of the World. The Illicit Life of Capitalism is really good. It's about how the entire country of Equatorial Guinea is basically owned by the state of Texas. And then also the real sort of darling of economic anthropology right now is Liquidated. This is a really great book. This is an ethnography of Wall Street bankers. It studies the peculiar customs and habits of the modern priesthood that attends to our pantheonic myth called the stock market. This is a really great book. Okay, the air conditioning came on. That's fine. Maybe there'll be a hum. Who knows? It's definitely showing up on the mic, but you know what? It's fucking hot in here, so we're gonna deal with it. I did my undergrad in film and media, got my master's in education. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on someone who may pursue graduate level degree for film and media? If you got your master's in education, it sounds like you might be into academia as a profession, like you might like teaching. If that's the case, go for it. That's what a PhD is typically for. It's like notoriously difficult to get out of academia once you're in it. That's why I'm always in a low grade state of panic. My advice for anyone who's thinking about going to that PhD level is that don't go anywhere that doesn't give you funding. A PhD program should always be funded. You should never go into debt for a PhD program. And then B, be sure that you either know exactly what you want to study and that you love it so much much that you can think about nothing else for 5 years. Or you can go to the ICR and do a Frankenstein degree like I did. They're not paying me to say this. I love that program. They leave me alone. How do you combine your study of economics with media studies? So just out of a sort of twist of fate, I happen to be friends with a lot of econ majors in college, who I'm still friends with and are now econ PhDs. And I sort of liked that broad scale systems-based thinking that they did. And then the further I got into film school and then in grad school, the more annoyed I got that there wasn't any real attention to the economics of film in film programs. That's so crazy to me because like film is an art, absolutely, but it's also like film is a multi-billion-dollar international business, you know, it's an industry. And it seems ridiculous to me to claim that you have a holistic knowledge of film, even as an art, if you don't like go outside the boundaries of textual analysis or history. And I mean, looking at how economic policy and philosophy shapes the ways that movies are made and who's allowed to make them and why they're allowed to make them and when. So basically, I think film is absolutely worthy of textual analysis. Like, don't get me wrong, like people should continue to do that, but it cannot be the end all be all of what film means. Issues of economics are always going to be in play for media more than any other art form, I'd argue, including music. So yeah, if I had my way, all film programs would include at least one econ class. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think if you study film closely and honestly, you will sort of naturally have questions that can't be answered except economically, if that makes sense. I'm starting an MA in film studies this fall. Do you have any advice? Do you recommend going on to a PhD? I kind of think there's an argument to be made that an MA in film studies is more marketable for future employers than a PhD, especially if you're going to a program that's just film studies. A PhD in film studies basically only qualifies you for academia. So if academia isn't your ultimate goal, I would say no, do not get a PhD in film studies. I mean, seriously, the market is impossible right now. And I think also that if you have an MA in film studies and you didn't go on to a PhD and you're primarily in it because you like love film and you want to know more about it, I think having an MA gives you enough of a familiarity with the structure of academic thought and the methodology of academic thought that you can kind of get yourself to a PhD level of knowledge on your own. And then that way you don't have to spend 5 years writing a paper that no one will read. Or you could go on to, again, another PhD program like the ICR that structures things differently, that lets you explore, different things. Or you can, take your film knowledge and apply it to a sort of, unrelated PhD. There are plenty of programs that are open to, students from different academic backgrounds going into a different PhD program. That happens all the time. So don't feel like if you got an MA in film, don't feel like you have to, that like a film PhD is your only option. It isn't at all. Could you explain the death of the author to a media analysis noob? Yeah. The death of the author is essentially the idea that an artist's intentions have fuck all to do with how whatever piece they made should be received or interpreted. There are arguments in favor and against the death of the author, and all of them are as right as they are wrong, as far as I'm concerned. I recommend Lindsay Ellis's video about this. It's very comprehensive. But essentially, I think that while the interpretation of art basically belongs primarily to the individual, we do ourselves and art a disservice anytime we don't accept that a piece of art is a conversation that's happening between the artist and the audience. It's dialectic. It's something that happens continually. It's not just a product that is there for you to receive. Are you a philosophy reader? Are there certain philosophers you gravitate toward and you want to throw tomatoes at? Yeah, it's not always the case, but it certainly is in my case that you kind of have to be a philosophy bro in a PhD program because it's in the title of your credential. I like Ian Bogost right now. He's really cool. Also a very accessible readable scholar. He's a really, really great introduction to sort of non-human centric philosophies like object-oriented ontology. I'm also really into Hannah Arendt. She's really great. I really dig how her analysis is sort of coming back now that power dynamics are newly becoming a big deal in society. It turns out that she was kind of a genius. Whoopsie. So it sort of matters what she says about authoritarianism now. I also like Douglas Hofstadter a lot. I have his books around, but they're far away. I think all philosophy is worth reading. I think it's important. And I think that even silly philosophy is worth reading just because it's a record of human thought. That's what humans are best at, is just like sitting around and thinking shit up. But I will say, in fact, I'll make a sort of anti-death of the author argument and say that the sort of like big popular philosophy bro guys, your Kants, your Nietzsches, your Schopenhauers, Hobbes, even like Plato, your Marcus Aurelii, like those are guys who cannot be understood without understanding their very specific cultural contexts and who they were as people and how their inability to square their own subjectivity with their claims to objectivity alters the value of their work. I think that's pretty diplomatic. How do you pick video topics? For a long time, I really wasn't sure at all how I was picking video topics, but recently, honestly, like as soon as I got into anthropology as a field, everything kind of clicked into place, and I realized that what I'm really into is sort of like social pathologies. That's basically what monsters are. They're just manifestations of social pathologies. Sometimes the monster just isn't really very artistically compelling, and we just call it the deep state or whatever. That's also a social pathology. It's a monster. It's something that we invented to explain why things are all fucked up. In any case, if it's fucked up and weird, then I'll probably get obsessed with it. Who/what convinced you to start the channel? So basically, I didn't like the idea that any academic thought I would produce would get to a journal and just sit there unread forever and ever. That's typically what happens for most academic work. There's a huge accessibility issue in academia, and I saw other people starting to bridge that gap on YouTube, and I thought I could try that out too. I really, really, really don't like a lot of things about social media, but I did know that it's full of people who want to engage sincerely with academic ideas, with rigorous thought, without having to get past a fucking $60 paywall or whatever. And I was right. How do you advertise? I don't. Has YouTube's algorithm punished you for having demonetized content? No. Like my Babadook video is age restricted, which really sucks because I like that video a lot. And I know for a fact it doesn't get as far because of that, but like just for demonetization, no, I don't think so. Most of my videos are demonetized for some reason or another. And that includes my absolute highest watched ones. So I think the issue is less demonetization itself and more the reason behind the demonetization. If it's just a copyright infringement, I don't think YouTube punishes me at all. That's been my personal experience anyway. How have you grown your channel? I didn't for a long time. The first real pop I got was in late 2022, where the algorithm just like picked up that video I have about the thing, and it just kind of went wild. I had nothing to do with it. Besides making videos that I'm proud of, I really don't see any commonality between any of the times my channel has gotten a lot of attention, except for maybe just the general rule that the more attention you have, the more attention you're going to get. YouTube is very much a luck game. I think there's very little you can do to sort of nudge the algorithm in your favor. I know there's a thriving, cottage industry of YouTube gurus or whatever that will say differently, but I'm not convinced. It's mostly luck, I think. Was there anything in your formative years that led to you being fascinated by monsters and the horror genre? No, I was always a weird kid. I don't have any idea where my preoccupation with monsters and creepy spooky stuff, it's just always something that I've been into. I don't know. What is your usual process for researching your topics of interest, developing your script, constructing the final video? Really, I think it is just as simple as just like writing around that like research question that I mentioned earlier. I'll read whatever books and articles I can find surrounding it, but frequently the stuff that I write about, like part of the reason that I'm interested in a topic and want to write about it, make a video about it, is because I don't really see much engagement otherwise. Like, I don't want to make something that somebody else has already made, you know? And typically the research question kind of, you know, I have to research around it because nobody has done that for me. So I can't, I can't learn what I need to learn from somebody else's work. So I have to make my own. It sucks. Did it take you a while to reach this? Does it vary, or do you got it locked down now? I'm not really sure there is any other way to do it, to be honest. I really am not a person who can just like chat around a subject on the fly. I mean, like I'm doing it now, I guess, a little bit, but I try, like in videos, I like to be really, really careful with my words. So I absolutely must have a script before anything else is done. The only real fluctuation I've noticed is turnaround time. The Sound of Freedom video took about 3 months of like concerted, serious effort. And the video I made about Twitter, when I had COVID, I'm not calling it X, go fuck yourself. That video I made when I had COVID, I wrote, filmed, edited, and posted that in a single afternoon. So I don't know. It's, I wish I had it locked down. Any inspirations or influences for your video essay style? I mean, I think anybody with a passing familiarity with like the video essay style can see the Lindsay Ellis in my stuff. I think the every frame or painting in my stuff is pretty obvious. Dan Olson is pretty obviously, I think, an influence, especially in the propaganda videos. I've noticed that my style gets more folding ideas-y the less music I use. Dan has this really, really great like rhetorical rhythm that kind of replaces the need for music in his videos. And I find that really interesting and fun to play with in certain videos, especially because incorporating music means like an extra 2 days of editing. And I don't think I'm a very good filmmaker. Like I don't enjoy filming. I hate it. Like I don't like, you know, like right now I don't like what my lighting looks like. I fucked up the audio for the first like half hour of this Q&A, you know? So any amount of effort that can be sort of taken off my back, is great. Basically all that is just to say that I absolutely watch other YouTubers and absolutely interested in their styles and the way that they construct their arguments and the way that their arguments are sort of backed up by whatever aesthetic they choose. Part of being not that great a filmmaker is like I haven't really landed on an aesthetic and I don't really know what to do there. So whatever, I'll just keep on trucking and see what happens. You've mentioned your struggles with mental health in the past. How do those struggles affect your creative interests and output? Yeah, I've gone through some pretty dark patches that I think social media is in a really, really great position to take advantage of. Like, I think a person who's more creative in a different way than I am could sort of take their mental illness and turn it into engagement in a way that wouldn't be self-destructive. I know that people have done that. But one of the things I think I'm fortunate in is that studying social media makes it a lot easier to see where you stop and the platform begins. I think that's really important. That's kind of what I was saying about media literacy. I do not think it's healthy to broadcast your mental illness as it's happening. And I try really hard to not work or to make stuff or to avoid making stuff when I can recognize that I'm in a bad place. Because in my opinion, it can't help but taint the work. Like, if the work is good, then like if you make something when you're in a bad spot and the work is good, then you start getting into this point where you think you can only do work when you're sick, or the work sucks and you're embarrassed by it when you're better, you know? Either way, it's bad news. So while I'm really very happy to discuss my mental health issues in the interest of like demystifying it and making it seem sort of more approachable, less of a monster, you know? But I don't like to let it touch my work if I can help it. I want work to be a categorically positive thing for me. And I think one of the things I'm fortunate in my position right now is that I can do that. I can stop working if I have to. I can like take a week and recenter and figure out what I need to do to stay healthy. I think that's one of the worst things that our current economic structure does to people, is like force them to work when they really shouldn't be, Do you plan on branching out to additional genres that you haven't yet covered? Yeah, I think every genre has some kind of fucked upness that's worth exploring, because art is about the human condition, and the human condition is fundamentally fucked up. In the future, I've got a bunch of stuff on the list. I'd like to look more at sci-fi. Cringe comedy I think is really interesting. Superheroes for sure. Westerns for sure, crime movies. It's all on the table. Your channel is pretty horror themed, even if you branch into other topics. Do you feel the same way about the genre as you did when you first made this channel? If you started over again, would this still be horror themed? I went through a long period of time where I really was not sure at all what this channel was supposed to be or what to do with it, because my interest in horror, like, it's not just about the movie itself or like its aesthetic qualities. Those are certainly important, but I'm interested in what the movie says about human issues, and I think that sort of transcends the kinds of niches that YouTube likes to funnel people into. I mean, like I said, sort of discovering anthropology in grad school kind of fixed that, because it made it a lot easier to recognize what horror and monsters are doing for us and where their meaning comes from. Like, meaning is what I'm interested in. I said once a long time ago that I don't think that horror is necessarily always the best genre, but I do think it's always the most honest genre. And I still think that's fundamentally true. And therefore, horror is probably the easiest place to find, evidence of human meaning. Why did you leave out the more meta aspects of Pennywise in the Stephen King universe in your It analysis? Because it simply wasn't what I was interested in at the time. I think it's important to leave space for the sort of smaller and more specific stories a monster is telling, even if that monster is part of a bigger universe or a bigger plan. I mean, there's plenty of time to get to get into the bigger stuff. We contain multitudes, Why did you name your channel The Morbid Zoo? I had monsters specifically in mind when I named the channel. I think of my approach to monsters specifically, but also every sort of social pathology, as a matter of scientific interest. Hang on. Some people think snakes are scary, and that's fine. It's okay to think snakes are scary. But I think it takes a certain amount of emotional maturity to accept that even if you don't like something like snakes, they're still worthy of the kind of care and invested interest that comes with love. Even if you don't like them. And that's the approach that I kind of like to take with all sorts of shit that freaks me out. So that's kind of where the title came from. Ooh, okay. Yeah. Are there any media you fully believe is problematic propaganda, but you enjoy despite it? I think I think Bone Tomahawk is a super good movie, and I like it a lot. And I'm sure this is not the case in every instance. I know that there are good arguments to be made for why people should not enjoy Bone Tomahawk and why Bone Tomahawk is actually not a good movie at all. But I mean, my impulse is to regard arguments that you can't like Bone Tomahawk because it's racist to be pretty disingenuous, honestly, because all Westerns are in some way inherently racist, because white supremacy is literally built into the fabric of what Westerns are supposed to do. Like that's the meaning that they're providing is a sort of myth surrounding white supremacy and American exceptionalism as it relates to white supremacy specifically. All Westerns are an American myth-making device, and as such, they are all racist. But I think Bone Tomahawk is simply doing something more interesting than a lot of Westerns and a lot of horror movies. It's my absolute favorite Richard Jenkins role. And I don't know. I just think it deserves a more generous look than some people seem willing to give it. Dallas Sonye can still go fuck himself, though. Are you planning any more deep dives into film or TV series? Before Patreon removed the goals feature, I had a goal where I would cover the entirety of The Walking Dead if I achieved a certain number of subscribers. I still toy with that idea sometimes. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see it. I kind of go back and forth on that one, because on the one hand, there's a lot to talk about. So I think it might be fun in that way. But on the other hand, God, I can't stand that show. So, but I don't know. That might just mean it'll be even more fun. I don't know. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Have you thought about doing a video on why we love monsters, or a video on when people become the monster in a story? Yes, it's on the list. Ever plan on doing essays in Spanish? I don't know if you speak it, but I've seen you use some sources in Spanish, so that would be cool. Okay, my relationship with Spanish is kind of complicated. My dad speaks to me probably 50-50 in English and Spanish. My dad is very much not like an assimilationist kind of guy. So I was, you know, and I appreciate my parents for doing this, that like I was very, very exposed to Mexican culture growing up pretty consistently. And I have a native familiarity with Spanish. And when I go to Mexico, I can get around fine. There are a lot of people in my family who don't speak any English at all. But because I was never immersed in it the way you need to be to attain fluency, like, you know, my dad would speak Spanish to me and I would speak English back because I knew he understood English. So there was really no need, you know. I was never in a survival situation where I needed Spanish. And so because of that, I have kind of a first grade vocabulary in Spanish. And that sucks because I can understand everything everyone's saying to me. I can read it. And the only way to get better at a language is to speak it, but I simply cannot stand how much dumber I sound in Spanish. So, you know, unfortunately, the short answer is probably not. Really, what I would love to do is move to Mexico for a few years. And I think my Spanish would improve markedly really, really fast. But we'll see if that ever becomes a possibility for me. How often do you find your initial take on a subject changes significantly once you've completed the research and script writing process? After the research, almost never. Attack on Titan felt truly like the universe was playing a cruel trick on me. I will never make claims about a series that isn't over ever again. Lesson fucking learned. But my opinion on Twilight changed completely when I actually started doing the research. I thought I was going to make a video about, a sort of routine video about how much Edward Cullen sucks. And that completely changed over the course of research. That was a lot of fun. I love having my mind change. Will you do a video on Berserk? Yeah, probably. I got to watch it. But everybody keeps telling me it's super up my alley. So I'll probably love it, and then I'll probably tell all the people that told me to watch it that they need to watch it too, and then they'll remind me that they're the ones who gave me the idea in the first place, and then I'll be really embarrassed. It happens all the time. Can you recommend me a wine? Right now I'm drinking something called Woodbridge, which I like because it comes in this big ass bottle. And also because the CVS next door to my house sells it, which means that I don't have to drive. So hope that helps. I think you once mentioned a scholar who noted that a story can be satisfying but not meaningful. Could you define those terms and explain it again for me? And if I'm right and it came from an essay or book, could you drop the source? I'd love to read it. Yeah, that quote actually came from a novel called The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is a very good book. I think because it's a novel and not an academic piece, he doesn't define those terms, but I will though. I take it to mean that, the difference between satisfaction and meaning is that satisfaction kind of protects your expectations of how the world is supposed to work, while meaning sort of leaves room to disrupt those expectations while still enriching your humanity. So like monsters are the perfect example, I think. Monsters are not very satisfying at all. Like they're kind of anti-satisfying, but they're always meaningful every single time. Do you have any pets? I'm so glad you asked. This is Tommy. This is Rita. Oh, shit. And this is Ingmar. His name used to be Ingrid, because I thought he was female when I first got him and he was a baby, but he's since grown up, and upon closer inspection, I'm fairly certain this is a boy snake. Which of your videos would you recommend to a first-time viewer/stranger? Probably the Hellraiser one. I think that's probably the best representation of what I'm about. What is your favorite thing you've made? My favorite thing I've made is always the last thing I've made. Every time I make something, I'm convinced that it's the best thing I've ever made, and I'll never make anything as good as long as I live. For the record, I think that's kind of how you should react to your work if you're any kind of creative worker. But yeah, so basically, my favorite video right now is the Sound of Freedom one. It's the last one I made. I don't think I'll ever make anything as good ever again until I finished this video I'm working on now. Do you have any video game narratives on your radar for future projects? Would also like your general thoughts on the differences between those media. Did making your Elden Ring video need a different approach to the other videos you've made? I really love video games, but I'm also really careful about which video games I let into my life because I just don't have the time to get into a video game, any video game, well enough to make a video on it. It just takes too long. The Elden Ring video was special because I didn't really have to approach it any differently from a movie, I felt. So yeah, I'll probably make more video game analysis once the PhD is done. I have a little bit more time. I mean, it's a different medium entirely. So typically the Elden Ring video is an exception. I think typically a video game analysis will take a certain kind a different kind of attention. Probably not anytime soon, but eventually I'll do video games again. And until then, Jacob Geller can handle it. He does my shit better than I do anyway. How do you distinguish between a horror movie that is shocking but profound from a movie that is shocking for the sake of being shocking? I think of a movie like Martyrs or any Lars von Trier movie. I find those movies to be superfluous in their despair and shocking material. I think it depends on your perspective. Personally, I really like Martyrs. I think it's saying a lot of the same things that Hellraiser is saying. And Melancholia is straight up the best filmic metaphor for depression I think I've ever seen. But I mean, I understand not liking them. You don't have to like them. I don't think all movies have to be for everyone. But I don't know, like even tasteless, gross torture porn, I think is sort of anthropologically profound. Like I think it's profound that humans made this thing. I think there's profundity in the fact that humans want to feel aesthetic and emotional pain so much that it can sustain an entire subgenre. That's wild to me. So basically, I don't distinguish between them at all, I guess. Have you ever wanted to make a movie, or what ideas stand out to you that would be interesting to see in theaters? No, not really. I like producing work. I think that's really fun. But like, again, I don't think I'm a very talented filmmaker, so I'll leave that to the people who are. But I really do like helping people that I think have a good idea on their hands. And in terms of ideas, I'd like to see more, I don't know, I'm really interested in the kind of existential dread that you can build on screen with depictions of size and specific kinds of strangeness. I think that certain kinds of disturbances just hit different in movies than they do in books. So, you know, I'm thinking like more Nopes, more Annihilations. What is your favorite and least favorite part of running this YouTube channel? And my favorite part is getting to say the stuff that I think should be said in the way that I think it needs to be said. I think that the visual aspect of video essays carries a lot of value that's sort of missed in more traditional articles or books or whatever. And my least favorite is probably how literally everybody takes everything. Like if you know, that thing of like, if you blog a recipe about pancakes, it must mean you hate waffles or whatever. Like I think people are way too convinced that you have to say absolutely every single thing that you think in every single video. I think trying to meet that expectation fucks with the rhythm and the integrity of an argument, and people need to deal with the fact that that there are different ways to interpret things and that they can all be true. That's literally the point of art. So people telling me like, I clearly don't understand this or that because I didn't explain absolutely every single thing there is to know about Stoicism or Christianity or whatever. Yeah, I think that's, oh God. Oh, also filming. I hate filming. Where is the line of sympathy for a monster that once crossed reduces their effective monstrousness? Monsters stop being monsters the second you understand where they came from and why they do what they do. I think that's the case for any object of fear, because I think that sympathy, if we're talking about sympathy, I think that sympathy is kind of antithetical to fear. I don't think that those two feelings are really capable of coexisting. Like kind of similar to multitasking. Like when people say they're multitasking, they're not. They're just like switching from one task to like between tasks really quickly. I think that fear and sympathy kind of work the same way. What's one book, comic, or written work you would like to see adapted into a movie or show? Truly nothing would make me happier than like a really carefully made SCP series. I think it would be hard, but I think it would be possible. I think the trick like most adaptations, is to not try and replace the original. And also to, like, I want it specifically, like, for, because I don't think there are enough, like, nice monsters, kind monsters. And there's so many of those in SCP, and I'd like to, you know, see those adapted. Like, there's one SCP that's just like a little paper crane that, like, copies itself in the office copy machine and likes to hang out with the agents. Like, I want to see that, please. What piece of art has had the biggest impact on you? This is probably going to sound really cliche, but the Goya etchings and black paintings really never get old for me. I know there's this like folk rumor that Goya was like possessed by a demon, and that's why he like painted all those things. And that's obviously bullshit, but I do think it's kind of revelatory of how genius those pieces of work are. Like, it truly feels as though somebody guided his hand to pick out the most nightmarish lines possible. I love looking at those etchings, those paintings. I love them. Have you considered writing a book? Yeah, I'll probably write nonfiction books eventually. Maybe fiction at some point. I've got to finish this degree. Then we'll see. Have you thought about doing a podcast, or have you been on any podcasts? Are there any you'd like to be on? I've thought about making my thing where I'll talk with a friend on the way home from a movie in the car. I've thought about making that into a podcast, but I don't know. I honestly kind of think that works fine as a Patreon perk for now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's that thing I did with Ziana a few months ago where we watched the new Exorcist movie and just like clowned on it the entire way home. I don't know. If you want more of that, let me know in the comments. But for now, I'll just keep that on Patreon. For other podcasts, yeah, I listen to podcasts all the time. I drive a lot, so I'm always playing podcasts. I'm pals with the guys over at Drunk Banthas, and I've guested with them a couple times. That's always super fun. I'd love to be on some horror specific podcasts. That'd be cool. Honestly, the dream for me would be Normal Gossip or the Purrcast. So if anybody knows Kelsey McKinney or Stephen Ray Morris, please tell me so that I can bribe them with money I don't have. Please, somebody let me talk about my cat. What are some of your favorite cover arts? A lot of the late 90s, early 2000s cover arts for horror DVDs and VHSs, I think, were really great. Like, I remember walking around and looking at video stores and just like sort of stalking the aisles of horror. For the youths among us, video stores are, they were these businesses where you would go in and you would like pick out movies physically to take home with you. You may think of it as online shopping in person, perhaps. The ones I remember are like things like Dead Alive, Pumpkinhead, I think had a cool cover, Fright Night, like those really weird ones that are sort of like either composite photographs or basically matte paintings where it's sort of more representative of the vibes of the movie than anything that actually happens in the movie. And also just the ones that are like super bizarre and gross, like Zombie is super bizarre and gross. Those really make me laugh a lot. Like, I remember a lot of those movies, a lot of mouths that are sewn shut, you know, like a lot of like freaky monsters that are really well designed but don't actually appear in the movie. The ones I have in mind are all sort of lost to time, I think, because the cover was the coolest thing about them and they just weren't very good movies. I'll try and find a few and put them on screen. Favorite spooky moment in an otherwise non-spooky medium? This is hard because I feel like the intuitive response is like that one part in like The Brave Little Toaster, like the boat scene in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but like no, I don't think that's fair. I think those movies are both kind of horrifying anyway. So okay, so I have two. The one is that scene in Parasite where the kid sees the guy who lives in the basement and thinks he's seen a ghost. It's like a super scary shot. It's really effective, and like it's shot like a horror scene. And then there's that episode in Atlanta where Paperboy gets robbed and like chased into the woods by those guys who maybe want to kill him. That's super scary. It's also very much shot like a horror movie. The Teddy Perkins episode as well, actually, while we're at it. More of a horror comedy, maybe. Wait, also that scene in Looper where the old guy is like progressively losing body parts because they're cutting them off his younger self. Holy shit, that's so scary. Have you ever read Blood Meridian? What are your thoughts on it? If you sign up for the $15 tier on my Patreon, there's like a 50-50 chance you'll wind up with a copy of Blood Meridian. It's literally my favorite book of all time. I know some scholars consider it the sort of cultural dividing line after which Westerns can no longer really be made sincerely. I don't know if that's factually true, but it certainly feels true. That book kind of encapsulates all my feelings about American history and kind of life in general, honestly. It's super beautiful and awful to read. I love it. What's a book or a few books you grew up with that you can quote from without opening the pages? He can neither read nor write, and in him broods already a taste for mindless violence. Anything that exists without my knowledge exists without my consent. The horse was watching, out there past men's knowing, where the stars are drowning and whales ferry their vast souls through the black and seamless sea. What is your guilty pleasure movie or book? I unironically love X-Men Origins Wolverine. It is such an incredible mess. And also I genuinely think that Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth is one of the great wasted casting decisions of history. He is perfect. Have you seen Dune 2? And if so, what's your opinion on all the right-wing influencers who describe it as anti-woke? I have seen Dune 2. I think it's great. The right-wing reaction is just another example of conservatives just like selectively including and ignoring any information that fits their worldview. That's sort of the thing about any kind of supremacy, male supremacy or white supremacy or whatever, is that like you get to reject any information that disagrees with you, no matter how silly it makes you look. Supremacy is like is the ability to not care how other people live their lives. You know? Dune 2 is not only a super normal movie that's just made really well, it's like explicitly a commentary against prescriptive authority. It's like, it's Babby's first narrative subversion. Conservatives make it so hard to take them seriously. I cannot. What kind of impact do you think Dune 2 and its current financial success will have on the future of blockbusters in the film industry? Unfortunately, if I'm being cynical, I think the lesson Hollywood will take from Dune is that they should sink more money into extremely expensive adaptations of other work, and not that they should invest in filmmakers who know what they're doing and have respect for their craft. I'm really glad that Dune is good, and I'm glad it's doing well, but I don't think it's going to fundamentally change anything about the Hollywood status quo. What are your thoughts on bodies, bodies, bodies? You gotta understand that like I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to movies, to be honest. Like despite the reputation that film scholars tend to have, like I think that's pretty typical. Like I don't know. I kind of take the Curtis Connor attitude of every movie is good, you know? It takes a lot for me to say a movie absolutely shouldn't exist. And if I do, it's usually because I think the movie literally makes the world. Oh, fuck. Anyway, yeah, I was talking about movies that don't deserve to exist. The Avatar series can go fuck itself. I hate it so much. But Bodies, 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 I love it. It's an original story. Awesome. It's well acted. It's well made. I think it's really funny satire. That's all I need. Thumbs up from me. I like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. What's your favorite old man movie? If we're talking about movies for old men, probably High Plains Drifter. If we're talking about movies about old men, probably Up. Hi, this is Editing Mariana. After I filmed this, I was thinking about it, and though Up is a really good movie, I love it a lot, nothing against Up, it's absolutely not my favorite movie about old men. My favorite movie about old men is Secondhand Lions. How did I forget? Do you follow the indie gaming horror scene? And what are your thoughts on the topic overall? Yeah, sort of. I do. But I get all my indie gaming news secondhand because, like I said, I can't be exposed to video games too often lest I be sucked into their worlds. I do think that video games as a medium offer a much different interaction with horrific ideas. So I'm interested in getting into them more for sure. But I just don't have the time. Top 3 favorite fuzz pedals. I know this may be disappointing to hear, but I'm acoustic. Sorry. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the new French Extremity movies, if you have seen any of them. Yeah, for sure. I'll cover this in the future. I don't know. I want to do more research about it because I haven't really solidified my thoughts around French Extremity in particular, but also that kind of, I wouldn't even call it gorehound horror, really. But just, that kind of horror that's really, really preoccupied with torture and pain. But I mean, I guess my initial thoughts are that it French Extremity to me kind of seems like sort of the non-cynical, sort of unpolished versions of American torture porn. Like if torture porn weren't so beholden to the American box office system, I think we'd have a really interesting, sort of disturbing film tradition that could compare to French Extremity. Maybe in the future. Who knows? Do horror movies even scare you anymore? You become mostly numb to them. They'll creep me out sometimes. It's pretty rare that a movie will actually like make me upset and scared and like I get the adrenaline rush or whatever. I'll get startled. but that's different. That doesn't count. Somebody on Twitter brought up how tired and flat the MCU has become and proposed a way of freshening things up by making films focused on non-superhero characters impacted by the changes in the world around them. Like someone who got snapped after coming back, experiences a rift from their friends who are much older than they are, or a movie about a priest who has to accept the existence of aliens and Norse gods. Do you think this could work? And if they decide to go the film direction instead of towards TV, could these movies make money merely by putting Marvel's name next to them? I don't know. I appreciate this sort of thought toward sort of revitalizing the MCU, but no, I don't think that's the way. That really just kind of sounds like a series of normal stories to me, right? Like you could make a movie about a priest that has to contend with the idea of aliens regardless of what the MCU is doing. If you did that, you wouldn't have to be constrained by the rules of the MCU. So no, I don't like this thing that the MCU has introduced into film culture where it's like the first cycle or like this first sequence, the whatever they call the Infinity Saga made a lot of money. It was very historic. And so now the obvious lesson we should take is that film and TV needs more rules. I don't like that. Let the MCU go, honestly. If not every genre or franchise is appropriate for every cultural era, that is fine. It's okay to just let it go. I kind of think that we've outgrown superheroes for a while. And that's okay, you know? If they want to keep making stuff, I think that's fine and great. I really like the MCU as kind of a filmic experiment, but I also think that if Marvel does want to keep making stuff, then they need to like disabuse themselves of the idea that all their movies and shows need to be blockbusters. Like if they truly can't make anything without a blockbuster budget and the expectation that they're going to make every dollar back, then it's time to move on from the MCU. You cannot force people to like something that they fundamentally aren't ready to receive. Do you have a Letterboxd account? I do, but I don't really use it. So you can follow me, but I don't know. Maybe I'll pick it up someday. What are 6 films that are close to your heart? Okay. Hocus Pocus, The Fellowship of the Ring, if I have to pick one out of the trilogy. The Three Caballeros, Babe, Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. And okay, that's 5. Oh, The Kid. The Kid. This movie where Bruce Willis meets himself at like his 8-year-old self. It's this weird, like really weird movie that came out in like 2000 or something. It's not very good, but like for some reason it was super heavy in my rotation as a kid. I haven't seen it, I think, since I was like maybe 10. Might be time for a rewatch. What themes speak to you the most? Typically sort of existentialist type stuff. You know, like I think Elden Ring is sort of that way, and I talk a little bit about that in that video. I like horror generally because it sort of challenges your ideas about your expectations of the world and how flexible those expectations can be. So like I consider Nope sort of a perfect movie. Like I don't think it's like, you know, perfect objectively, but for me, like the themes that it covers of like the nature of surveillance and the nature of entertainment and our sort of like exploitation of animals in the natural world and how exploitation and surveillance it sort of necessarily distorts your relationship with the natural world, I think is super interesting. So yeah, I love that movie so much. 3 books of fiction you've read several times besides Blood Meridian: House of the Scorpion, The Golden Compass, and The Poisonwood Bible. What are some musical artists you listen to when you feel like raging against capitalism? I mean, if the question is raging against capitalism, I gravitate for sure towards sort of Southern Gothic bluegrass, sort of unpolished country type stuff, past or present. So like I'm a good Oklahoma girl, right? I love Woody Guthrie. Give me some Pete Seeger, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings. More modern, Rhiannon Giddens is a big one for sure. Kaya Cater, Coulter Wall, Parker Millsap. Bruce Springsteen is, I mean, he's not really blues or country, but I feel like he's spiritually in with that crew. Yeah, when I rage against capitalism, I like music that was made in response to the duresses of capitalism. I would love to hear your thoughts and analysis on the wave of post 9/11 torture focused horror movies like Saw and Hostel. Was this the catharsis for the wider public after the horrors of 9/11? Yeah, I talk about this a little bit in my Babadook video. I want to make another video about it later on when I feel like I can afford an ad-restricted video again, because that's not getting any ads on it for sure. But I mean, essentially, yeah, I think it's pretty accepted among film scholars, at least, that 9/11 sort of broke the kind of American delusion that we were sort of untouchable for some reason. And I think torture porn was partly in response to that. Yeah. Would you rather look like Jar Jar Binks or talk like Jar Jar Binks? I'm not a Star Wars nerd, but my understanding is that Jar Jar Binks is a senator who is due the respect he deserves. But yeah, I'd for sure rather look like Jar Jar Binks. I think if I looked like this and talked like Jar Jar Binks, I'd have a much harder time fitting into society than if I were literally in an alien body. I feel like as kids raised on movies, we see them as fun, exciting ways to spend a few hours, but at some point a film is presented to us that changes the way we see the medium, opening ourselves up to enjoy more artistic filmmaking. Is there a film that did that for you? There are two. The first one is Lost, the show about the island, and Lord of the Rings. Those are the two first pieces of film that I can remember watching and having the same thoughts about. Two thoughts. The first was, holy shit, I didn't know you could do that. And the second was, I want to think about this for the rest of my life. Favorite clown? Art. He's single-handedly bringing clown respect back to America. I love it. Do you have any opinion on the woobification of so many villains, or even just the broad watering down of evil in a lot of narrative these days? I think American culture is so culturally divided right now that the film industry is having a really hard time trying to find a form of villainy that everyone can agree is simply bad. And I think that in the future, like a few generations from now, when we've got our shit more together, if we get our shit more together, I think that that's going to be a bad reflection on everybody. I think we should be able to accept that some things are just bad, and that you can behave badly without having that much of a reason. Sometimes the reason behind people behaving badly is not the point of a story. You know, sometimes bad shit just happens. Sometimes you don't get to know why people do what they do, and I think that's important to sort of feel comfortable with in life. I think also that there's not a lot, the industry doesn't have a whole lot of trust in audiences to be able to tell the difference between situations being bad and those situations being manifested metaphorically in a character and individual people being unrepentantly, irredeemably evil. And I understand why that is, because that certainly is how a lot of us in real life treat each other right now. But I think the best art is proactive, not reactive, and the industry is being way, way, way too meek about how they treat villainy just because they don't want to alienate anybody. And when that happens, the movie really just doesn't end up saying much of anything at all. As usual, horror comes to the rescue. I think it's one of the few genres that's in a good position to sort of counteract this right now, because the entire genre is predicated on the idea that sometimes bad things do just happen. Like, if you haven't seen Late Night with the Devil yet, go see it. Oh my god, go see it. What's the best video game storyline? Fallout New Vegas. Favorite action movie? John Wick 2. Favorite comedy movie? I feel like I'm gonna alienate some people by saying this, but Elf. I love Elf. I love Christmas. Go fuck yourself. Favorite science fiction movie? Annihilation. Favorite video game? Right now I'm playing a lot of Civ 6, and I love Stardew Valley and The Sims because I'm a woman in my 30s. I just finished my Faith Dexterity Elden Ring playthrough. That was a lot of fun. But my absolute favorite video game franchise is Fallout. Fallout 4 is not a very good story, but fuck if I don't play that game over and over again. What do you think of Beau's Afraid? I haven't seen it, I'm sorry. In your personal, unbiased, and always correct opinion, what are your thoughts on the gritty crime genre with movies like The Departed, LA Confidential, of course, the classic Heat? I like crime movies. I like cop movies. I think that, like a lot of pop culture, like, you can understand that movies might be propaganda-ish, and that they wouldn't have been made if they weren't sort of supportive of law enforcement as it's currently structured to some degree. But that doesn't mean that, like, the movies themselves are absolutely worthless. Okay, like, we can still enjoy or appreciate the artistry of movies and how they craft a narrative. In fact, crime movies I'd like to sort of get into more for analyzing. I think this sort of tension that they have to strike between needing to be a sort of underdog narrative because it's an American movie and that's how we kind of prefer to think of ourselves, and also ally themselves with law enforcement, which is the violent arm of the state. I think the way that crime movies manage that dichotomy is interesting. I want to think about it some more. Del Pinocchio. I love it. I love everything Del Toro makes, because even when it's not great. Del Toro is very much a filmmaker who I think just like pours as much love and sincerity into everything that he makes. And I'll excuse a lot of bad about a movie if it's made with that kind of sincerity. I like the idea of setting Pinocchio in fascist Italy specifically. And I love the ending. The ending absolutely makes it for me. I love the idea that fighting for life and fighting for the people you love is worth it, even though everybody's going to die anyway. I'm really, really sick of nihilism and objectivism and you know, all of these like sort of nascent ideologies that say that like, you know, human life is only worth it in so much as we can as we can make stuff. That shit's so childish. We're all going to die. Figure out how to make it worth it anyway. You know, I love Pinocchio. Yeah. What is the best, most wholesome show/movie that always makes you feel hopeful and joyful when you revisit it? It's gotta be Bluey, you know? God, I love Bluey. Haunting of Hill House. I love it. It's one of the only things that has actually frightened me in recent years. It made me turn on all the lights and get cozy in a blanket, you know? The tall ghost really freaked me out. But also I think it's kind of the last horror story that gets to make the horror a metaphor for mental illness. Let's put that away for a while, I think. Baskets, love it. Small Soldiers, love it. It's creepy and weird in the way kids movies used to be, you know? Bring back traumatizing kids movies. We don't have enough of those anymore. Game of Thrones, I love Game of Thrones. I think it's a real shame that they never got around to making that last season. I guess we'll just never know how it ends. Andor, like I said, I'm not really a Star Wars nerd, but I did watch it and I did like it. There were parts where I kind of forgot that I was watching a Star Wars show, which I think is, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I do still prefer The Mandalorian. Sator, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I haven't seen it, but I do hear good things. It's on my list. Is it microaggressive to ask your thoughts on Blue Beetle? Yes. Have you played Disco Elysium? No. Will you play Disco Elysium? Yeah, probably. Would you be open to story consulting for film or game projects? Yeah, I've actually done that before and it's super fun. If you want to ask me about doing that kind of thing, simply email me. I might not answer like instantly, but I'll answer eventually. Bloodborne vid when? Whenever I finish this degree and have some time to play video games, man. I don't know. But eventually, probably. What are some movies you think have some interesting things to say, despite not necessarily being great films? I think Knock at the Cabin qualifies. I think, like, everybody's acting their asses off in that movie, and I genuinely do think it's pretty compelling and interesting thematically. I don't think it's as bad as people say. I don't think it's great, but, like, it's not that much of a failure. I do think the title is bad, though. Shyamalan just should have kept the title, The Cabin at the End of the World. It's much better. I'd love to hear your thoughts on horror in different cultures, e.g. American, European, East Asian, etc. Yeah. I want to make more videos about the cultural differences in horrors. I just haven't had figured out a way to properly synthesize it yet, but I will. What's a terrible horror film that you unabashedly love? Leprechaun. No, I will not elaborate. Favorite Radiohead album? OK Computer. Favorite album? Right now, probably Strange Tales. I like the thing Lord Huron does where the album is sort of telling a fictional narrative. I think that's cool. I also think it's cool how 3 of the songs on that album are basically just the same song, like Love Like Ghosts, Meet Me in the Woods, and The Night We Met are all the same song from different angles, and I think that's really cool. They do that in Vita Noir 2, Wait by the River, and When the Night is Over, both the same song. Do you have any interest in The Day the Clown Cried? The odds of anyone seeing it are unlikely, but if you could, would you? I've got news for you. The Day the Clown Cried is getting released this year. It's an incomplete copy. I don't think any complete copies exist, but I mean, if I get the chance, I'll probably watch it. The Holocaust is a pretty big fixation of mine, as you can probably imagine. Please discuss the Jurassic Park series as a horrific tale of scientific deceit as done in the novels. I kind of do that in that Foundation for Economic Education video. Go watch that. What are your favorite horror novels? Coraline for sure. Pet Sematary, The Hellbound Heart. I'd honestly argue Blood Meridian is kind of a horror novel. Beloved, I think, is also a horror novel. I'd argue that too. I don't read enough horror novels. I don't have any goddamn time. But there are a lot I'd like to read. I hear really good things about The Only Good Indian. Things have gotten worse since we last spoke. I know there's some like really brutal horror novels that I'd like to read eventually. Like I'd like to read is it The Wasp Machine? The Wasp Factory? What are your thoughts on creepypasta and decentralized internet horror? Like it? I love it. I think art is one of the only unequivocally good things that the internet has done for society. I think there are some really, really cool art projects happening on the internet. Invisible games. Invisible games is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I haven't looked into it too deeply, but I hear really good things and think it's a really cool idea. What is your favorite food scene in a movie? I like the scene in Succession where Tom takes cousin Greg to eat that gross dish where it's just like a whole songbird that's been roasted and you have to eat it with like a dishcloth over your head. It's so weird. This is a question I've been thinking about for the past few years. Is the concept of heroism flawed? I ask this because while I don't think heroism is inherently a bad thing since it's an altruistic virtue that can be an effective response to social apathy, and it doesn't need to be individualistic, I realize that the current American culture has a strange idea of heroism and heroes, and I don't think this is a uniquely American phenomenon, as the concept of hero or superhero has its root in folklore and mythologies around the world. Well, you're completely right that heroism certainly isn't a uniquely American phenomenon by any means. Like even our particular kind of heroism, I don't think is only reflective of our own values. But I mean, like, yeah, basically, yeah, the concept of heroism is flawed in the same way that any folkloric tradition that reflects a human experience or an aspect of human nature is a flawed representation of how humans should actually be doing things. I think the big problem with how we relate to stories right now is not the stories themselves. It's that we kind of seem to have lost the ability to think abstractly. Like we have this idea that stories should give you like a concrete map of behavior and otherwise they're not worth telling. And the reason for that is because a lot of contemporary pop culture, if not all contemporary pop culture, is attached to profit motives. So like the worth of a piece of art or a story is directly attached to the money it either makes or encourages its audience to go out and make. There's nothing inherently wrong with heroes as an archetype, I don't think. What's wrong is just how literally we take them. If you had to make an equally left-leaning Daily Wire company, who would be your top 3 hires? I would sooner walk into the sea and never return. What are your thoughts on the viability of mobile/maneuver warfare in an age dominated by drones and IEDs? Okay, so maneuver warfare is the kind of warfare that like traditionalist masculine weirdos on Twitter like to fetishize, right? Like because they think it's like the thing, they think like by violent conflict is the thing that like gives meaning to human life or whatever the fuck, helps them get over their crippling insecurity. But like drones and IEDs are always what war was gonna turn into eventually with enough technological development. Because warfare is fundamentally always about getting the drop on your enemy. It's about informational dominance before it's about physical dominance. And that's why so much communication technology comes from military research. As a government, you don't want to send your people to death unless it's like absolutely necessary, right? And when governments do send their people to death without it being absolutely necessary, it's because there's some kind of incompetence in the top brass that they then typically cover up by encouraging a stronger cultural warrior ethic, right? From what I can tell, that becomes more and more the case the better remote warfare and information warfare gets, which I think is sort of part of the reason those obsessively masculine weirdos keep trying to inject this like super like combative warrior mentality into daily life, because when you remove the part of war that allows you to apply more meaning in your life, it literally is just awful, impersonal death worship. Like war is bad. We should avoid it. So I think kind of the more remote war becomes, the more we're going to see this sort of desperate affirmation of warrior mentality. And it's not because it's tactically necessary, it's because it's culturally necessary to keep people invested in the idea that war is a worthwhile pursuit. So basically my answer, I suppose, is that in an age dominated by drones and IEDs, maneuver warfare is going to be less important tactically, but it's going to seem a lot more important culturally, if that makes sense. Like our attitudes, we're going to fetishize it more, I guess is what I'm saying. I think my biggest concern with cinema nowadays is a worry that we're playing it too safe, that censorship is on the rise, that movies were more radical in the 70s/80s, and now everything is getting too self-referential and samey. But of course, that's not entirely true. Creativity does still exist and new voices are being heard. What do you think? Should we be worried, hopeful, or is it the same as it ever was? It's the same as it ever was, but that also doesn't necessarily mean much because it's a capitalist industry and the nature of capitalism is constant change because capitalism capitalism has to constantly keep re-justifying itself. That's kind of its best quality, is that it needs to be reactive to what the customer wants. That doesn't mean that capitalism is any more sustainable. It isn't. But I don't think that there's ever going to be a situation where we can point to and just say that things were unequivocally better and we should go back to the way we made things then. Like, film in the 70s and 80s was more radical and independent, and that's really great and cool, but it was like part of the thing that enabled that radicalism and independence was that there was like no oversight, and it was unbelievably abusive and corrupt, and like every bit as it is today, and arguably worse. Like I think we're quick to forget that there was a lot of really ugly stuff that was made back then, and like there were masterpieces, but a lot of money was made on the back of a lot of misery and literal violence. So I think the problem with American film has always been that attachment to profit motive, and so I actually am kind of hopeful, because not because our film industry is doing very well, but because other countries' film industries are doing exceptionally well, because they live in countries where there's actual government subsidies for art. What a concept. There's still going to be good movies, don't get too down on it, but they're probably going to be from places that aren't here. How have you found the response to your "Trump is not a fascist" video from other leftists? The main criticism I get from that video, from leftists specifically, is kind of that, what I consider the same breed of willing ignorance of the hypocrisy argument around foreign propaganda, right? Which is that it doesn't matter what Trump actually believes, because his administration behaves fascistically and we should therefore treat it fascistically. And that's the end of the conversation. I just think that's so dumb. Not because that's not true. Like, he surrounds himself absolutely with fascists and allies himself with fascists, and his policy is therefore effectively fascist. Yeah, absolutely. But like, we need to stop being so reactive and be honest about the situations we're in if we're going to address the presence of that kind of ideology in society. Like, we need to figure out where the weaknesses are in our culture that results in somebody like Donald Trump becoming president of the United States. Like, I like saying it doesn't matter like whether Trump is actually a fascist or not. It's like saying that like you've been sentenced to a cage match to the death, and it doesn't matter whether your opponent is a tiger or an octopus, because they're both carnivores. I don't know. That's a weird metaphor, but like, you get it. It matters. It matters where Donald Trump came from, so that we can get out in front of it and, do our very best to not have any more Donald Trumps. When humans die out, what animal has the best chance of inheriting the earth? I think realistically, since they're already on land, probably either roaches or crows. But if orcas grow legs again, it's all over for us. Do you hold any hope that the USA will ever move beyond the only two choices, both being imperialist, hyper-capitalist, warmongering political parties? I know this is kind of a unpopular opinion, but I think in so much as the USA has a cultural tradition, the best parts of it are the parts that advocate for like the disenfranchised and the downtrodden. And I think that exists here in a way it doesn't in a lot of other countries. Like that's why I like blues and country, right? Because those musical traditions are uniquely American in a way that I think actually has a lot of positivity to it. Because they're expressly against the idea of arbitrary authority, at least like old country used to. New country, not so much. But I mean, regardless, the best parts of America, I think, are the parts that weren't planned. And I think that emerged in spite of and in response to imperialism and capitalism and westward expansion, and all the bad things we've done. And I think that we shouldn't forget that, just because American culture has been so commodified. Like, there's still good shit in America, and the good shit typically has to do with outsiders skirting authority, right? Like, every cool part of American culture comes from Native people, Black people, Asian immigrants, Mexican people, queer people, and specifically poor white people. So yeah, like, I mean, don't get too down. Like, there are things I think to be genuinely proud of in this country. They're good seeds here in this pile of bullshit we live in. Fries, tots, or onion rings? Fries, onion rings, then tots, in that order, unless I have it on good authority that the onion rings are reliable, in which case onion rings are way at the top, and also unless cheese, chives, bacon, and sour cream are involved, in which case tots are way at the top. What made you a left-leaning person? So I actually used to trend more libertarian, but then I went to grad school and learned more about economics and what a market failure really is, and how often they happen because humans are not automatons. We're not machines, and we don't come in sets of one. Like, we have relationships, and those relationships with other humans typically take precedent over what is, should be like good for us, or like maximize our utility or whatever. I think the difference between being a libertarian and being more of an anarchist, like I consider myself, is that truly leftist people believe that that capitalism is itself an unnatural form of authority, and people should be freed from the kinds of imperatives that finance impose upon us. The idea that libertarians have that like everybody should be free to do whatever they want to do, except for capitalism. They absolutely always have to play by the rules of capitalism is so stupid, and immature and dumb. And so, once I realized that, I think I was I think that's when I grew up. What is your worthless superpower? I'm really, really good at parallel parking, which I recognize is not strictly worthless, but I am really proud of it. So what is an unusual / interesting fact about yourself most people don't know about? So in between undergrad and grad school, I considered fairly seriously becoming a taxidermy apprentice and going to work doing specimen prep at museums. That's why I have so many skulls. So if you see a skull in any of my videos, is not always the case, but it's typically like something I found and cleaned myself. Do you think we should befriend pigeons? Not only do I think we should befriend pigeons, I think pigeons are worthy of our love and admiration. I think they're certainly, at the very least, deserve some affirmation that their nests are looking really, really great. Honey, you're doing great. Hobbies. So one of the things I had to leave behind when I moved to LA was the big saltwater reef tank that I have behind me in my Pirates video. I used to work at a fish store, like a fish, like an aquarium store, a fish for aquariums. That was by far my favorite retail job that I've ever had. As soon as I have the money and space again, I'll make another reef tank. I love it. It's like, it's kind of a similar sort of balancing art as like growing a fancy orchid or something, because you're typically like trying to figure out a way to like make a lot of different creatures from different parts of the world get along with each other, and that requires a lot of like patience and respect for the animals, which I think we could all work on cultivating. So yeah, that's my favorite hobby. When traveling at a subatomic speed during the last 1 hour of hypersleep, which Voltron will suffer the wrath of the inescapable quickening? For bonus points, how many wraths until the next vector? This is beyond my powers to heal. You need elvish medicine. If you were trapped on a deserted island, what 3 movies would you have? Remember, you don't have anything to watch them on, so you'd just be looking at the DVD. This is not terribly imaginative, but I think I'd probably bring the first 3 Pirates movies, some kind of inspiration to maybe get out of my situation. If you lost an arm in an accident and you had to replace it with a power tool, what power tool would you choose and why? I know this is probably kind of the default answer, but it's gotta be like an electric drill, right? Like that seems like it has the most destructive and creative potential. Do you like rats? I love rats. I've had several pet rats in my day. They're amazing. They're like tiny little dogs. The only thing I don't like about them is that their lifespan is like 3. It sucks. It's so sad when your rat dies. If budget and time weren't an issue, what place in the world would you most like to visit? Oh, Christ. Oh, man. That's a really difficult question to answer. There are so many places. I think maybe like the deep Amazon. Like deep Amazon. I think there's a lot of like wildlife that I'd like to see there. Yeah. That's my answer. What would you do if you were trapped on a desert island with nothing but a cloning machine? Knowing me, I think I'd probably I'd probably feed myself for a few years, and then I would inevitably get curious and clone myself, and then my clones would clone themselves, and then I'd be trapped in a Mariana Forever war. What does your daily routine look like? Because I work for myself, no, I'm on nobody's schedule, so I typically kind of roll out of bed at 11 a.m. I feed myself. I'll read whatever book I'm reading for a few hours. I'll walk the dog. I'll do some chores, buy some groceries or whatever, and then typically like around 5 or 6, I'll look at the clock and start panicking because it's 5 or 6 and I haven't done any work. So I'll sit down and just like panic write a bunch, and then I do that until I collapse and wake up at 11 again. Every now and then I'll go and like have like a proper scholar's day and go to the UCLA library and just sit among the stacks for 8 hours or so. What is a song that evokes intense nostalgia for a happy time in your life? Any version of I Put a Spell on You. Hocus Pocus was a really, really formative movie for me. It's one of the first movies I can remember really loving. And that song, I don't know, that song always cheers me up, which is weird, I think, because it's like pretty dark and like full of despair, but I don't know, Bette Midler makes it sassy and fun. Are you pro or anti egg salad? If you've been following me on Twitter for long enough, you will know that I'm very pro egg salad. It is my widest feature. Would you do well in a zombie apocalypse or be one of the first to die? I think I'd do well for a while and then just get tired, and quit. I have a low patience for sustained discomfort. Toilet paper, fold or scrunch? Scrunch. Life's too short. What does your diet and eating habits look like? Have you ever had an eating disorder? I've never had an eating disorder. I hope you're doing okay. Of all the things my brain sort of arbitrarily decides are a problem, food has never been one of them. I don't know why. I have a pretty good relationship with food. I love food. Food loves me. I eat basically whatever I want when I'm hungry, and I try not to eat too much. It's worked pretty well so far. To whoever asked me that, like, food is a problem for you, give yourself a break. Like, nothing has to be fundamentally wrong with you. Just because I've never had an eating disorder doesn't mean like I'm like fine and good. Like I've got, like I said, like plenty of other things that my idiot brain just decides is the thing that I need to punish myself with, or that is evidence of my, intense unlovability, I think anybody who has a sort of disorder of any kind is kind of prone to that kind of thinking. I think more people are more similar to you than it may sometimes feel. What are your thoughts on scarification? It's fine with me. I don't know. I'm very much in favor of people doing what they want to their bodies. Typically, I think that body modification that involves some sort of degree of self-injury is a pretty important part of human culture historically. That's sort of the argument I'm making in the Hellraiser video. I know scarification is intensely important and to a lot of like cultures coming of age rituals. I don't personally find it especially aesthetically appealing. It is not for me. Like Killmonger's scarification kind of sets off my trypophobia, But at the end of the day, I don't think my opinion on other people's bodies really matters very much. What are your thoughts on chickens? Very pro chicken. I cannot wait to have a little bit of land, so that I can spend hundreds of dollars a year to like barely break even on not buying eggs. I can't wait. Can I get the time? I've got 11:17. Yes or no? Yes. Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Not yet. What's one moment for a life you'll never forget? When I was like 9, I was at a friend's house and I was sitting at a table and I had my right foot on a skateboard and I was like rolling it back and I was like rolling it back and forth. And I saw an ant walking across the floor and I looked up. And then I looked down, the ant wasn't there anymore. And sure enough, it was because I had like run it over with the skateboard I was rolling back and forth. And I looked at the ant and I thought to myself, I'm never going to forget this moment. So, waffles or pancakes? Waffles, as God intended. Based on the 2002 Animal Planet show The Most Extreme, if you had to pick, what animal would you consider the most extreme? There's a species of bristleworm called a sand striker. Some people call it a bobbit worm. I think that name is sort of falling out of favor because it's a reference to the lure in a bobbit case, and like she was horribly abused, and John Bob is a huge asshole, and it seems like the kind of situation that we probably shouldn't be sort of trivializing by naming horrific sea creatures after her. But it's, oh man, sand strikers are so much. Okay, so this worm like buries itself in the sand with its like these horrible pincer jaws facing up, and it just snaps at anything that passes by. And it's like a pretty big pest in home aquariums because people will accidentally like put baby sand strikers in their tank with like pieces of coral or live rock or whatever, and then wonder where all their fish are going a few months later. And then finally this horrifying nightmare worm comes out at night. So they're like, they can get like 10 feet long. You can't even mutilate them. Like you have to take them out whole, because if you cut them in half, it'll grow a new head. I watched a lot of The Most Extreme back in the day, and I honestly don't remember if they had a segment on this worm, but if not, then Animal Planet has only themselves to blame for their dereliction of duty, because sand strikers are the most extreme animal. They need to calm the fuck down. What's something you'd like to tell the class about yourself or what you're doing that you feel like you couldn't really do unprompted? I suppose I do this all myself. Right? I don't have any writers. I don't have an editor. I research by myself. I write by myself. I film by myself. I edit by myself. I have a friend who, does some sort of like moderation type stuff for me, and will look over my scripts before I film them. But this truly is like this is such an isolationist job. It no longer feels like I'm screaming into the void, but it is a really weird position to sort of make stuff blind, if that makes sense. So I suppose I would like to emphasize how grateful I am for anybody who watches my stuff. I think it's so bonkers to me that that my channel has gotten to this level, and that I get to do this for any amount of money. That's insane. So, if my stuff speaks to you, and you feel like, you don't want to like, I don't know, you don't want to comment because it'll get lost in the noise, or you don't want to like bother me. No, if my stuff speaks to you, like I want to hear about it. Like tell me, I read the comments. I have open Instagram DMs. It makes my day when people tell me that my stuff matters to them. By the time I finish any video, it's like I've been so into it for so long that it's the level of quality is just like not. I can't see what I've just made. For that reason, hearing feedback is really important to me. So I suppose. Thank you. I know like there are a few people who've been around for years, who've been watching my stuff for years, and who've been, supporting me the entire way. And that's incredible. Like just the degree of support and encouragement that I get from people. I don't know. I feel like there are sort of scant opportunities to really sincerely say thank you. So thank you. I've got another video in the pipeline in progress now, and it's coming out in June. It has to, because I signed a contract for it. So I will see you then. Bye.